This is WVBN from Italy. The diplomatic and scientific entourage in Norfolk, between Italy and the United States, began with an exchange of pleasantries and food aboard Signora Rex. A technological exchange saw licenses for the Johnson machine gun and rifle, and more modern aircraft engines from the United States be approved for Italy. The US also agreed to share their research on the Herald system, a defensive hydrophone and sonar net for submarines in exchange for Italian submarine snorkel designs. The Ford Company agreed to send a technical expert to modernize Italy's industrial sector for a significant price. American companies would also assist the Italians in drilling oil in Libya. Military forces from Italy and the United States would see exchange programs train up each other's forces, with Italian frogmen, mountaineers, and paratroopers working with the US, while US Marines would go to Italy. Both nations would also allow the other to observe operations in South America and the Balkans respectively. The final exchange saw the sale of 3 liner hulls to Italy, 2 of which would remain as fast transports while the third would be converted into a light carrier. 2 other Italian liners, SS Conte Rosso and Conte Verde, would be sent to the United States for conversion at a later date. Accompanying these carriers would be 60 older fighters and 52 older dive bombers of American design to train up Italian pilots at Lake Champlain between New York and Vermont. At Lake Champlain itself, military personnel had been hard at work preparing a new base for carrier flight school. As USS Ranger was stuck in the lake, she would take on a new life as a carrier trainer. What had previously been an otherwise mundane posting was jolted to life when Ranger awoke upon hearing the news that her first class of pilots would be arriving shortly. With a boatswain's whistle, Ranger announced, "Attention all hands, this is Ranger. Look alive, boys, we're gonna have company and we got some work to do to get back into fighting trim. Everyone up on the flight deck in 5 so we can have a powwow." Standing on the far end of the flight deck, Ranger reminded everyone that this war was going to be unlike anything anyone had experienced before. Back in the Mediterranean, the Regia Marina, as well as Hosho under heavy escort, sailed out to thwart Nero's conference. They were too late to stop it, and soon the towns and cities of Italy started receiving gift baskets floating ashore, compliments of the masquerading Morgana. Radios broadcast a speech where she proclaimed herself the savior of the Italian people and praised Mussolini. Even so, the Italians realized she was at best still a raving lunatic, and all across the country rejected her stations and arrested her thralls. The physical gifts were still largely unaccounted for. At sea, Nero's palace had vanished, but Nero herself remained ready to fight the Regia Marina, with the Morgana Ilaria gunning for her as well. As Ilaria pinned Nero's fleet, the Regia Marina and Hosho began their attack. Hosho's pilots were sent up to scout for the enemy fleet so the Italians could engage them, but her pilots had other ideas. In one of the most daring raids of the war, Hosho's small band of older aircraft dropped a perfect bombing strike on a Sin, a carrier far larger than Hosho. As her island and deck were ripped to pieces, the Morgana shrieked in rage. At the same time, battleships Vittorio Veneto and Littorio ranged in Nero's fleet and started firing as fast as they could. Vittorio's No. 3 turret suffered a fire that put it out of the fight. What could have been a disaster was averted when her captain felt a reassuring hand on his shoulder. He calmed himself and rallied his crew to fire deliberate, measured shots at a steady pace. All 6 shells of the next salvo hit Nero squarely, with the follow-up impacting the crippled Sin, who threw herself in front of the would-be emperor and exploded. As the smoke cleared, Ilaria retreated to her own devices, and she signaled to the Italians that Nero had escaped before vanishing herself. The Italian fleet suffered only light damage, and would need a few weeks in dry dock. One of Vittorio's lookouts claimed he saw a woman with wine-red hair looking out at the sinking wreckage, but no sign of her had been spotted since. Napoli began her voyage to Italy proper after extensive work had brought her back to a seaworthy level in Eritrea. Having been saved from the scrapyard by Espero, the aged battleship was finally at a presentable level, though most of the work above deck had not yet begun. Despite a glancing wound as she was being towed out of dry dock, She slowly made her way up through the Suez Canal, where Pola and Giulio were eagerly awaiting to receive her. While there had been fears of Morgana interdiction in the Mediterranean, this week saw almost no sightings of the vessels, perhaps a reaction to Nero's conference. Instead, many excited locals took their own boats out to see the spectacle as Napoli made her way to Genoa, a farther port than planned but a much better equipped one. Even so, there was still a brief encounter with the lone Morgana submarine, one quickly detected and dealt with by the Regia Marina without issue. As Napoli finally reached port, the Admiralty ordered a stoppage on work, as they had a change of plans to determine what to do with her going forward. In the Balkans, a multinational fleet was assembled to begin the hunt for disease known as Elisabetta, including the Italians, Turkish, Greeks, and Romanians, with Bulgarian and other Romanian rivercraft accompanying the larger vessels. Trouble began when a Greek Belle and Turkish vessel collided by accident, soothed over by the Romanian destroyer Belle Regele Ferdinand. Greek destroyer Basilia Olga, who had been involved in the earlier collision, distinguished herself as a leader by inviting the captains of the fleet to coordinate communication from her stateroom. The Turkish reportedly lamented that the Belle of Yavuz was unable to join them. The Bulgarians were left envious as the only participants who yet lacked an awakened Belle. While relations were improved during the search for Elisabetta, the fleet was ultimately unsuccessful in locating the Morgana. No ghost ships were active in the Mediterranean this week, and Italy was unable to capture any. The aging warship Pisa was brought out of mothball for a brief refurbishment before being returned to Greece as the sister ship to Georgios Avarov. Italian and Japanese diplomats began formalizing agreements which would see Japan license their Type 3 shrapnel incendiary shells, as well as the sale of a limited number of Daihatsu landing craft, as well as their licenses for production in Italy. Rumors suggest the Italians received information of benefit to their Marine Battalion, as well as potential deployments to the Dutch East Indies. Other rumors made mention of warship refitting, but no details are available at this time. Finally, in Romania, Italian transport of mountaineers and airborne assets continued for the hunt for Elisabetta. While the aircraft themselves were on schedule, the 3rd Alpini arrived a week late, embarrassing the Regia Aeronautica, who proposed a new system for efficient aerial transport, but would not be ready in time to save face. This has been WVBN from Italy.